the one connection which perhaps is symptomatic of this amazing hospital. The connection is that my father, you'll find him on page 140, 139, 140 of the book. He was just a doctor who came into the Barnsley Hall story like everybody else as a sort of coincidence. My dad had been at Birmingham University and Birmingham Medical School, and he was very keen on Birmingham. He was a Midland man. He turned his back on London. He did go to London after he qualified as a doctor, but he was very soon back at the General Hospital. He was referred to as the General in Birmingham. And so whilst a lot of his contemporaries thought of themselves in rather superior, thank you, roles, he didn't go to Oxford or Cambridge. He didn't aspire to anything of anything other than his desire to practice good medicine and be a proper citizen of Birmingham. He had returned from a brief spell in London to the General Hospital when hostilities broke out, and as probably get some of this wrong, but I think the reason that Barnsley Hall was so significant was because the Germans had chosen Coventry as a target for a bombing raid. It was a massive bombing raid. I can't remember, I'm sure I could be corrected, but it was a huge sortie of about 100 aeroplanes that flew from Germany and dropped their bombs on Coventry. And they did appalling damage. There was virtually no resistance to them. There was very little defense of Coventry, and the result of it was that they did a colossal amount of damage, and every single German aeroplane that bombed Coventry returned safely to Germany. And I think it put the frighteners on the folks of Birmingham, who realized how vulnerable Birmingham would be if there was a similar, they expected the same treatment. The result, of course, as we all know, was that Birmingham was, although it was bombed very heavily, and particularly the Austin works around the corner, Birmingham was not attacked anything like as vehemently as cities on the south coast. Plymouth and Exeter and places had a terrible time. Anyway, so Barnsley Hall, as I recall, and tell me, Bill, if I'm wrong, Barnsley Hall was a response to that possible threat that there would be huge numbers of casualties in Birmingham. And there was and the existing hospitals, that would be the General, the Queen Elizabeth, and a variety of other hospitals, including the Dudley Road Hospital, would have to deal with the casualties of war.
If they hadn't been hit by bombs themselves.
Exactly, exactly. So my dad was one of many who responded to the call, and he was in charge of the unit that dealt with chest injuries. They thought that they obviously had to cover the spectrum of medical casualties, and he was just one. It's very good. On the last page of Bill's book is a wonderful picture of the whole hospital as it was. So it was the original asylum at the top, and they built this great extension. Yes, it was the emergency hospital, and my father's was responsible for 2 of those wings, and they were the ones that were to be responsible for chest injuries. My dad never spoke to me about it. I never really knew anything about his war issues. He was, as I say, in Birmingham at the beginning of the war. He served here throughout most of the war, and then he went on to the Normandy landings. He was over at on D-Day plus 2 or 3, and followed the regiments as they moved through France, into Belgium, into Holland, and then into Germany. And he didn't speak of it, so I don't really know his full story. Partly thanks to Bill here, who's filled in stories of my own father, which seems to be ironic.
The part of the story that I enjoyed most was the friendship that it caused between Nigel's father and an American.
Yes.
A friendship which lasts today.
Yeah, very much so. So my father found himself here in Barnsley Hall, and an American who had volunteered to join the British fight against Hitler. Before America had joined the war, there was a really extreme example of Anglo-Saxon support. He volunteered. He was a surgeon in a place called Des Moines in Iowa. I don't know if anybody knows where Iowa is. It's not too far away from Chicago, west of Chicago. And he volunteered, and he got onto a boat that was going to take him off to a troop carrier. They obviously got some limited form of support, but it was not an official American support. They hadn't joined the war, is what I really mean. And the result of that was that he was sent towards North Africa, at which stage our wonderful troops in North Africa had